Good morning from Warsaw. How about this for a view when you step out a hostel first thing in the morning? To be honest, whether it was going to be rainy or hot, I'd still like to take advantage of the fact that Wednesday means in Warsaw you've got free admission to the Royal Palace. Admittedly, not everywhere in the Royal Palace is free today. However, there are a reasonable enough amount of exhibits to enjoy in the Royal Palace for 0 złotych. It would be a sin not to actually take advantage of that, wouldn't it? Let's step over the road with care and head towards the palace of the Polish kings and queens. No, not there, but very close by, just down here. There's the salmon-coloured palace, I think we can call it. Here we have a view of the reconstructed Old Town, as authentic as they could possibly make it. Even in some cases, down to replacing the brickwork with bricks from buildings of the period half destroyed in other parts of Poland, particularly up in the northeast of the country, which caused a bit of a controversy at the time. Understandably, the people up in the northeast wanted their own historic buildings reconstructed as authentically as possible. Didn't like the idea of Warsaw pinching a lot of the old medieval bricks to try and make as good a job as they possibly could of the capital's Old Town. I think they did a really good job. Others have said, oh no, you can tell it's reconstructed, it's fake. Come on, give them a break. What could they do? I think they did an excellent job, and we'll come back and see more of this a little bit later. But first, we've got to try and find our way into this castle. And there's a big arrow at what appears the obvious entrance point. The doorway there, the arrow points this way to the casa where you'll get your ticket. Oh, joining a very small queue, and there is a bit of a queue, but holy shit, it's going to get bigger. Oh no, they're leaving, good. And I guess I'll get back to you when we get closer to getting inside. And here we are inside a courtyard, just after the entrance. Had to pop back inside to get the ticket for the free stuff. You can pay to see additional exhibitions, but I think the free stuff represents a good bargain and a good representation of what's held within the castle. So I'm in here, but I guess maybe it's because it's free, or maybe it's just because Warsaw is chock-a-block with school groups at the moment. I am far from being alone. Had to go downstairs, left my jacket. Oh dear. And the first thing that's very noticeable is we're in darkness, almost. Unnecessary darkness, which is a shame because we can't enjoy the paintings. But what do you do? Bring a torch? Maybe that's the answer. This room's a bit better, a bit more light. throne room, which isn't exactly flooded with light, but it's considerably more light. Particularly grateful to be allowed to film in here, because many museums wouldn't allow you to, would they? We're getting treated to a cycle of Jan Mateko's paintings, the history of civilization, even though most of them are cast in darkness. Let's see if we fare any better here. Getting a little closer. Maybe we can make out some of the detail, but I know they want to preserve the colours and the pigments and don't want bright lights flashing, but having said that, to present paintings like this in such dark conditions really, well, it's an insult to the artist, I think, personally, because we leave without being able to gain a complete impression of just how fine his work is, which is a shame. Like a lot of the works here, unfortunately, they are shrouded in mystery, not just because of the dodgy lighting, but also the absence of information. I guess that's to promote the purchase of an audio guide, but you take what you can. It's free. The video gives an indication, maybe, of what you can see. Why not come for yourself in person? This is just a teaser. Perhaps it works well that way. You can't see as much as I would like, even firsthand, but you'll see more than on my ropey video, I'm sure. Okay, so now we're cooking with gas. The Yellow Room, one of the first interiors to be redecorated under King Stanislav August, using the neoclassical à la grecque decoration. After the November 1830 uprising, 37 portraits were sent to St. Petersburg and were burned by the order of Emperor Nicholas I. What a Philistine. Some early imagery of the symbol of Warsaw, Serena, the Warsaw mermaid. There we are. He's obviously Stanislav Augustus, isn't he? I guess if you were Stanislav Augustus, you'd be putting yourself at the centre of everything as well, wouldn't you? Human nature. Letting our egos get the better of us. Imagining ourselves being king. This room alone, to be frank, taking in all these portraits which have survived, and the decoration, well, this alone makes the short 15-minute wait in the queue outside and the other failings with the lighting insignificant suddenly, doesn't it? Lovely. So they got the lighting right finally. Thought it was going to be a very disappointing video, but now, with the much improved lighting, everything takes on an entirely different appearance, doesn't it? Thank goodness somebody put 50p in the electricity meter to give us more light. Thank you to whoever did that. The ballroom. It is the biggest and grandest in the castle. The ceiling painting, Disentanglement of Chaos, collapsed in 1939 as a result of heavy bombing. The recent restoration has had the room return to its shape from before 1939. I'm not sure about the disentanglement of chaos. I can't see that at all. There are only some things they could restore, I guess. Perhaps they had no images of what the disentanglement of chaos had actually looked like. Quite possible. Can you imagine dancing with a lady around here? If you're light-footed by nature. I guess the clumsy people like me had better stay off the dance floor. Look at all that gold leaf. Literally, gold leaves. Not the usual image of Atlas with the weight of the world on his shoulders, is it? Interesting though. So I guess that 1939 heavy bombing took care of all the ceiling decorations which were once in the castle. And that's why we noticed earlier, and continue to notice, their absence today. Which is unfortunate, but what can you do? Lucky what survived did survive. And a room of mirrors. We're all trying to circle each other carefully. Avoid a collision. Not one of these fellas to fall to the ground, do we? And here one of those Canaletto paintings, which I've mentioned a few times now. It's funny, before I came to Warsaw the first time years ago, I never realised that Canaletto ever left Italy. I'd always assumed he just hung around the canals of Venice, painting scenes of that city. The King's Bedchamber. The room belongs to the private residential part of the King's apartment. It's hard to believe that the King really slept on a fold-out bed, isn't it? Or a fold-out sofa. Or that he was only about, well, 1.50 meter tall, if that. We're left with more questions than answers, and not for the first time. Now we've got a little treat, haven't we? Finally, a ceiling painting. We can get some sense, perhaps, of how the other ceilings might have looked had they survived. Don't know what you're thinking. I'm suspecting a third throne room here. Stanisław Augustus Rex. Ceremonial sword, but you could still give yourself a nasty nick with it, I suspect. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The free option's certainly giving you a lot, isn't it? And it does make me wonder, one day maybe I'll have to come back, put my hand in my pocket, and actually see what's in all the other rooms. And being a religious man, of course, always helps if you want to control the people. The king had his own private chapel. It's that man Bellotto again, or Canaletto to his friends. This is quite remarkable when you see it up close. My goodness, the detail. I don't know if that comes across at all in this video, but my God, the patience to paint something on this scale with such fine detail is astonishing. How on earth did Canaletto find the time, or was he here with a school of apprentices who did much of the work under his supervision? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, the body of work the man left behind is quite remarkable. What a busy bee old Bernardo Bellotto was. We can call this the Canaletto room, really, can't we? And after Canaletto, a little bit more light and colour. Again, acting as a, dare I say it, like a sip of water, just to refresh our palates. And this is the officers' room. Masterpieces from Kiev. Beauty of natural light. Oh, mind your step. Not an original used by Stanisław Augustus, I imagine. Very nicely clean carpet, clean and colourful. Any information about this? The tapestry, Bacchus and Ceres. Isn't this a nice room? Through the camera lens, things seem a lot lighter. I wonder why that is. I hope my camera isn't malfunctioning. Oh, gracious, that looks as though it must have taken an age. Can't imagine the amount of work and steady hand that was required for that. We have figures dancing around Pan. I think I found my favourite piece from this exhibition. Yes, this selection of people surrounding Pan, definitely my favourite. If I was some crazy rich guy with a collection of art of my own, yeah, I'd go for this. This ensemble dancing circle, 17th to 19th century. How does that work? It's funny the pieces all look as though they were cast at the same time, but over up to 200 years. But that's what it says here. That man Pan again, trying to charm the ladies. Allegory of youth and age. Oh, looks a bit pervy to me. And just when you thought it couldn't get any darker, yep, it does. Maybe it's so dark in here because of the dark theme of war. Helmets and armour. Can't see a thing. Emperor Charles VII of Bavaria, mid-18th century. Darkened oak. Isn't that a super piece? Any horologists in the room? Any horologists in the house, I should say. And then you see some little bottles which take your eye, don't you? And it makes you just change your mind, perhaps. Hans Specker's interpretation of Diana and Actaeon, a work by Peter van Lint. And Giovanni Battista. And that guy really looks familiar. Charles I? Adoration of the Magi. Francis I, King of France. He really looks a nasty piece of work, doesn't he? Was he just unfortunate in having a face like that? Something you don't see every day. Now, I recognise this young girl, but I didn't know why. I've seen the painting, obviously, more than once, somewhere, but there's no name. Just Portrait of a Girl by Rembrandt, 1641. But it is eye-catching, isn't it? Something about it. No wonder it's famous. And here's another nice one. I haven't really seen a lot of Rembrandt paintings before. Look at the detail on this man's face, under the eyes in particular. Some kind of X-ray of what's under the girl in Rembrandt's painting. We see an X-ray of what's under the guy, which is very, very different. There's so much that's been covered over from earlier paintings, sketches, things he was just working on. How fascinating. Antoine de Bourbon, King of Navarre, 1555. Some of these old Flemish painters make me think, their works make me think of caricatures. They were somewhere between real life people's faces and poses and gestures. Amusingly, the subtitles are actually in the same language that the narrator is speaking in. And before we know it, we're back out into the main foyer. Well, I don't know about you, but I was rather chuffed about that. I don't know how long exactly I have been filming for, or how long I spent in there looking around, but that was a super way, I think, to spend a few hours, because I was going considerably slower than most people, and stopping and pausing the camera and spending more time than I actually recorded film for. But I still think I've filmed sufficient to absolutely bore you rigid. If not, I hope I've given you an idea of what you might enjoy if you come here yourself sometime. And if you want to read the history of the royal castle, feel free. I'm just going to scan down to the English version, if that's okay with Polish viewers. And then you can enjoy a little summary. Heck of a job rebuilding this lot, eh? And the gift shop. Might as well have a look round. Oh my goodness, it's busy. Something might grab your attention. A Copernicus pencil case, perhaps, for 29 zloty. Need a new place to keep your passport and other bits and pieces? Bank cards? Are they cushion covers? Obviously some nice t-shirts up there. Socks. What I would say is, as I'm in Warsaw, you might want to check out an app called Dailyart. Google them if you're not already familiar with Dailyart, and you'll see some of the advantages to having the app, not only to enjoy the feast of articles they write on art topics, art history, artists of the past, and they do have a lot of very nice items for sale as well. You might find, there's a Christmas theme, an Easter theme, or something for birthdays, and you might find some ideas which you can't see elsewhere. Something a little bit different to give to a friend who appreciates art. Just occurred to me while I was walking around here, seeing these nice pieces, and some are interesting, of course. Alphonse Mucha, The Four Seasons, Masters of Painting. Oh, actually, it's nice and it's reasonably lightweight, that one, I have to say. Not as heavy a gift to put in your backpack as you might imagine. The advantage of Dailyart, apart from a different selection of items, of course, and there may be some crossovers, you can get the items delivered to your address. Some tourist books, some of Canaletto's paintings reproduced in postcard form. prices of postcards, 2 zloty. I mean, come on, they're almost giving them away. And for Canaletto fans, and why wouldn't you be, let's face it, book in English about Bernardo Bellotto's time in Warsaw. Well, that's a treat in itself, isn't it? If I was going back to wherever I might be living, which is a hostel pretty much all the time, but if I had a home, in other words, I'd love to pick up this little book. That would be superb for my own private library. Maybe one day when I'm rich and not famous. Well, I don't usually say this. I usually feel in the museum gift shop, yeah, their prices are a bit steep, but actually, by comparison to other museum gift shops that I've been in the past, these are some really, well, the best prices I've seen, I've got to say, unless we compare it to some little visited museum somewhere in Asia, where everything might be considerably cheaper, but possibly of less interest. You're spoilt for choice here. There's almost too much on offer. And of course our man, Frédéric Chopin, he's remembered as well. Add to your collection of boys' toys if you're a boys' toys collector. Like a massive footprint in the sand, that's all that was left. But from that footprint, the walls were rebuilt, the roofs were rebuilt, and just look at Warsaw now. Do you remember Sesame Street, I wonder? I think he's missing his buddy, isn't he? Perhaps he's inside at the Castle Inn. Just come out of a back door entrance, I guess, at the castle. Finished looking at the free exhibitions and also the museum shop. Collected my stuff from the cloakroom. Free toilet in there, of course, which is always handy, especially if you've been walking around a museum for how long? I kid you not, I think it was about 3 hours, maybe more. And I only got access to the free exhibitions. You see? See what I'm like? I've told you before, I've warned you. I have warned you, when I get my snout into a museum, I can be like that. And I would have driven anybody I was with absolutely nuts. They would have hated it. He was just enjoying his lunch. He was having a late lunch, and now he's off. Beautiful horse. I want to come back and have a look around the old town and more, but I am getting a little peckish, so I'm going to pop back now, grab something from Carrefour, and depending on what's available, I may or may not pop back to the hostel. I might just eat on the hoof, so to speak, a bit like that horse was doing.